Welcome to UnCeiling You, the podcast that empowers ambitious women to take radical responsibility and break through barriers. I'm Dr. Natalie Luke, your host. Before we dive in, take a moment to download this episode so you can listen anytime, anywhere. If you love what you hear, please share it with your friends or social media network. Your support helps us grow. For those of you ready to take your ambition even further, consider joining our membership community. Imagine what you could achieve with the right tools and network. Our membership unlocks early episodes, practical workshops, and direct connections with inspiring leaders. Head to the show notes to join, download, or share. Now, let's get started with unsealing your potential and watch the ripple effect unfold. Welcome everyone to today's episode. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest, Jennifer Pestikas. Jen is a powerhouse executive with over 20 years of experience in the financial services industry. Currently, she serves as the Senior Vice President of Business Development at a Chicagoland financial institution, where she's honed her expertise in navigating the corporate world and achieving professional excellence. But that's not all. Jen is also the founder and CEO of Brave Women at Work. Through her company, she offers individual and group executive coaching to help women take bolder, braver actions in their careers. Jen's mission is to empower women to identify their strengths, overcome barriers, and achieve their career ambitions. On top of that, Jen is a podcaster, author, and sought-after speaker. Her insights on mindset, confidence, negotiation, professional presence, and more are invaluable for anyone looking to grow their career. Today, Jen will be sharing her personal journey, including how she faced and managed imposter syndrome in her career and what she's learned about building confidence in the workplace. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Jennifer Pestikas to the show. Let's get started.
Jennifer, I really appreciate you being here. What I want to do is go ahead and jump right in and ask some questions. So the first question is, in your experience as a leader in the financial services industry, what has been the most significant challenge or challenges you've faced as a woman? And how did you use ambition and imagination to navigate it?
Okay, well, first of all, thanks so much for having me, Natalie. I really appreciate it. We'll take this in parts, right? So what was the most challenging situation in my career to date in corporate? So I have answered this before in other circles, but I would say I had an amazing mentor, a male mentor, who could just, I don't know, advocate for me in talent management reviews and in all of the places and the spaces. And he really he partied hard, right? So he lived hard. He kind of had a rock and roll lifestyle, and he had also some health conditions coupled with that. And so he left us too early, and it was completely unexpected after a back surgery. So it was like complications from a back procedure, and left us way too early. And I was at a conference when I found out, and I called his cell phone because he was very well regarded in our industry. And people were asking about him. And then I called and I got one of our colleagues who had his cell phone and told me he had passed away unexpectedly. And the next 18 months to 24 months were a complete blur because I took care of the team as we were ushering through grief, ushering through transition. There were about 11 of us, and I did not realize the level of imposter syndrome, the level of stress that was going to ensue. But I'm here, right? I got through the other side of it. But that probably, bar none, was the most stressful situation I've ever been in from a professional standpoint. And I say, if I got through that, I got through the death of my own mentor, the death of my friend, the death of our leader, I could probably get through anything.
Right. And so how did ambition and imagination help you through all that?
So I guess I'll go through the imagination because that's what's coming to me first. So I dealt with significant imposter syndrome because he was so well regarded and such a good sales manager. I was in the investment services space, so he was a renowned sales manager. So it was always like, well, what would this person do? What would this person do? So that's where the imposter syndrome came, because it was like I had no voice. But eventually, as the months were on, I had to get creative, right? There was only so many notes in his file cabinet. There were only so many memories that I had of our conversations, and I had to start getting creative in these situations to manage the team through grief and how I would do it. So I would say that was how I used imagination was, I had to do a sales meeting with them and I had to come up with the theme on my own. I had to come up with the agenda and find the speakers on my own, even though I was afraid. So that's how the imagination came in. And then the ambition, kind of the sunny, I wish I could tell you it was a sunny ending to the story where, upper management in my particular situation realized that I could handle the job and that they were like, yes, Jen, you're the person. We're going to give you the promotion. But that didn't happen, Natalie. That did not happen. And I think that my imposter syndrome, I'll own my side of the street, came into play because people were seeing the imposter come out, right? They weren't seeing the true version of my leadership. And that didn't happen until much later. So I'll claim that side. But I also think that they should have seen how hard I was working and how much I had on my shoulders to manage that team through that situation and really just give me a shot as I was a loyal employee. So bottom line is I ended up interviewing someone that they introduced to me as what would be a financial advisor. And I came home and talked to my husband about it. And his name is John. And I said, hey, John, I really don't think that was a financial advisor. I think I just interviewed my next boss.
No.
And he ended up becoming my boss temporarily. And so anger propelled my ambition because I was like, wow, I was good enough to lead for 24 months while we were going through devastation and decimation in this department and such grief, but I wasn't good enough for you to actually give me the job. So my anger and frustration propelled me and said, hey, you know what? I am capable of this next spot. I am capable of moving forward. And you know what? We are all on good terms now. Sometimes leaders just miss it. They miss the opportunity or upper managers misses it or they make a bad judgment call. And, it is what it is. But I learned a lot through that situation.
That's fantastic. I really love you sharing that. And one of the things that you had shared with me is that you really wanted to talk a lot about imposter syndrome. For many women in executive roles, imposter syndrome impacts them. And I could tell you for sure, I've had a lot of conversations with my boss, who is a gentleman, and he is actually the founder of a company, and he even talks about imposter syndrome. So it's interesting that men can have imposter syndrome as well. It is a common experience. How do you take your experience in dealing with the imposter syndrome and work with clients to help them recognize and overcome it? And what advice do you have with women who are struggling with this mindset?
Yeah, this is a great question. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak on it because I deal with it a lot with my clients and, I've dealt with it myself throughout my own history. So I think the first thing is to realize I believe this is Jen Pestikas' view of the world. I believe it's part of the human condition. And so anytime you're moving to a new level or a new space, like it's going to pop up. And if you just know that it's coming back, like, so anyone that tells you that imposter syndrome, like kill it, or like, brutal terms, like we're like banish it or whatever, that's not real because imposter syndrome is closely tied to fear, right? Fear-based stories that we tell ourselves. And fear is just trying to protect you, right, from the saber-toothed tiger. So you are going to have it come up. And there is a cliche, and I don't know who to attribute this to, Natalie, but we'll just say it is not me. But there's a cliche in the professional development space called new level, new devil. And so anytime you're moving to a new level, the new devil of imposter syndrome is going to pop up. And so if you know that going forward, you're not going to beat yourself up about it because you know that you're human. That's proof that you're human. And then in terms of the steps of how to manage through it, right, is acknowledge it, just know that it's there. So the biggest part of actually managing it is just your awareness. So many years I was just running around with my head cut off, trying to overwork, outperform, prove, didn't have a sense of self-worth because I didn't slow down enough to actually just say, this is just part of the human condition. And I'm just going through imposter syndrome and it's going to be okay. So if you can slow down enough just to recognize like when those nasty thoughts come up, or that voice inside your head that says maybe you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not whatever enough, that is the big win right there. So celebrate that you've actually recognized that moment and you've made a choice to like just recognize. So that's the first piece. And then after that is you need to just take stock of all the areas that you've been successful in the past.
Right.
And just kind of look back at your, what do they call that? The brag file or the
Yes.
smile file, and look back and say, you know what? I did that. I can do it again. Or I was really successful in these areas. Like just go back and reflect and kind of shower yourself with that self-compassion, because again, it's just part of the human condition. And then after you go through that step, what you're going to do is you're going to reframe. And I always have my own clients pick a reframing statement, because what you're doing is you are carving a new neural pathway in your brain. And so it is just, if you're saying to yourself, you're a sum of your own thoughts. So if you're saying to yourself consistently, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, like that is going to get woven deep into that neural pathway.
Right.
So I, as a coach, can tell you, like, well, say this, but that's not going to help you, because I always ask you, what is something true that you can say to yourself?
Right.
Because it's not my voice you need to hear. It's yours. It's your
Right.
own. You can, stuff that I've seen other people say is, I am enough. I am worthy, whatever it is. I had one recently that says, leadership is more important than all the knowledge, one woman said, right?
Right.
Why? Because she's going to a new level in her career, but she's thinking, oh my word, I need to know all the answers.
Right.
Well, newsflash, no, you don't. You just need to have a great team and know where to get those answers.
Right.
And so she had to come up with something herself. So it's in the reframing. And then it's in the cycle. So I tell women that work with me, so, man, this isn't going to take like one session. And it's not because I'm trying to have them extend their time with me. It's because it takes time to, put these neural pathways in. It's going to take time to reframe them and to build that grit and build that confidence. And then periodically you'll feel you're fine. You're floating on the boat of life and you're like, oh, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. And then a wave's going to hit you and you're going to be like, well, there it is again. There it is again.
Here we go.
And here we go again. But the beautiful thing is that you will have tools to go back to now, and
Right.
you will do the process again. So that's the whole process I teach my clients.
I love it, especially because, especially the statement of the new level, new devil, and having to do that process again, at least once you've gone through it and you go through it a second time and you go through it a third time, you feel more confident, but still the coaching helps you because you then go through it a little bit faster.
Yep, that's actually a great point. So I'm always asking my clients, like, okay, how long did it take you to get to neutral mind? How long? So that we know. So when we started, maybe it took you, some people can be stuck in this place for months, right? Not to be scary, but it can take a while, and then it becomes days, and then maybe it's a day, maybe then it's a few hours, right? And it's not to say I'm trying to eradicate it. It's just actually saving your energy ruminating about it. That's the game for me.
That makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that you've been very vocal about helping women identify and overcome barriers that are holding them back, especially just being vocal. Can you share a moment when you felt like you were an underdog, and what steps did you take to help yourself succeed?
Well, I will tell you. So my favorite movie, if other people have heard me, my favorite movie is Rocky 1, which I believe is 48 years old this year.
Wow.
And I will just say, so I feel like my whole career I have been an underdog. So I would just say that there's that. In terms of maybe one example, I've been an underdog specifically is.
Quick break, everyone. If you're enjoying this episode, remember to download it for offline listening and share it with your friends or network. Sharing helps us reach more ambitious listeners like you. Want to take your growth to the next level? Join our membership program for just a few dollars a month and gain exclusive benefits designed to support you, early access to episodes, bonus content, and even a say in future topics. Don't just listen, be part of the journey.
What's holding women back from leadership? The answer might be in the broken rung. For every 100 men promoted to manager, only 72 women are promoted. The broken rung, an invisible barrier keeping talented women from advancing to that first managerial role, widening the gender gap at the top. It's a harsh reality, driven by bias in promotion processes. But there's a way forward. Introducing UnCeiling Your Career, a powerful new book that's a blueprint for breaking through. This isn't just another career guide. It shows you how to leverage your strengths, choose strategic projects, and build the skills you need to reach new heights. In UnCeiling Your Career, you'll discover practical tools to conquer self-doubt, design a clear path forward, and network with people who uplift you. Ready to reach your unique destiny and redefine success? UnCeiling Your Career. Available now wherever you like to purchase books. Don't wait for permission to rise. Grab your copy today and start breaking through.
I'm from banking, right? I'm from financial services, and I started as a bank teller. Okay. So for those folks listening that are on maybe the lower end of the career totem pole, I want you to know it can be done. That's all I'm here to share, right? Is that you can be vocal, you can achieve, you can succeed. It's going to take a lot of sweat equity. It's going to take a lot of hard work. You're going to have to network, do all the things, right? Do personal development, all of those tools in that recipe for leadership. Quoting my pal, Mylene Berizzo, who was an author in a recent book of Brave Women at Work and Lessons in Leadership. But I will just say that it can be done. And I'm saying that because for the longest time, I didn't think it could be done. And so it can be done. It should be done. If I were to give people who feel in an underdog place, maybe advice, is that it does go back to mindset. So if you don't think that you can, you're not going to. And I know maybe it sounds hokey but it does come back to what you tell yourself. So I've had situations where, you get beat down. That's from a Rocky quote. It's like, how hard is life going to hit you and how can you keep moving forward? So I've already given you some of my, when I had life hit me and the waves hit me. Okay, my mentor, my boss died early, right? Mm-hmm. There's a wave. I was not given an opportunity to advance. There's a wave.
Yeah.
I was beat down because they didn't tell me I was right for leadership. How about that? They didn't tell me I was a management material. There you go. I had burnout, I've had like other losses, on the personal side. I've had infertility loss, I've had like infertility, I've had pregnancy loss, so it's the decision that you make in those moments to decide, okay, I'm going to stay down for a little bit. Okay. And that's cool. Like you can stay down for a while. It's fine. But then it's the decision after that to say, okay, am I going to get up? Am I going to keep moving forward? And at the end of that quote by Rocky, it's like, that is how winning is done. Right. So it's the decision you make. And that's what I would tell people is like, you know what, you could be listening to this thinking, well, she's all roses and rainbows and everything's all fine for her. And that's not true. I'm sharing these examples on purpose because I want you to know that I, like you, have faced challenges. And it's the decisions that I've made to keep moving forward. That's how I've gotten to the places and the spaces in my career. That's how it's done.
I love it. So I when I was going to my first sales management position, I had interviewed twice, didn't get the job for two different positions, but they were at the same level. And my mentor called me up and told me I was making a fool of myself and that I should stop interviewing.
Yeah, no.
I was like, I'm not. That was a learning opportunity. I've learned something and other people learned something about me. And ultimately, the person that did get the job left the position after 6 weeks. And then I got the position.
Yeah, but think about that. So, Natalie, if you wouldn't have gone and then if you wouldn't have gone and actually been persistent, right, and had that, they may not have considered you as a candidate at all. because they didn't know that you were interested. And then when you didn't get it and you kept going, they saw your sincerity and like, I really want this.
Yes.
So after that didn't end up working out, maybe the time isn't right now, but it was right for you in 6 weeks, which isn't that long. It's not like
Nope.
you had to wait 6 years.
Nope.
So it worked out for you. And so I don't know how your colleague felt after that. Maybe they would have been like, oh, I'm going to eat some humble pie over here. But it worked out for you.
Yeah. He approached me like 10 years later and said he had been watching my career with great interest and he was super impressed and he had a VP position open. He wanted to see if I was interested.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned Brave Women at Work. You have both the podcast. You also have a series of books
Yes.
focusing on empowering women to take bolder and braver action. What are some of the steps you believe in that, and you've said quite a few already, that women should take to amplify their voices and ensure they're not silenced in the workplace?
Okay, so I think the few that come to mind is you have to understand what's important to you, right? So do that values work, which I know is very foundational. Maybe, some people are like, oh, that's elementary, but a lot of people don't do values work. So understand what's really important to you. The other piece that you need to understand is that no one is responsible for your career trajectory but you. So I thought for the longest time, oh, head down, work really hard. My boss is going to promote me and everything's going to be great. And it doesn't happen always like that. Some people do get that benefit and they have a boss that will promote them and get them to that next level and they don't have to advocate for themselves as much. But chances are you're going to have a boss or a time in your life where it's not going to work out so well. And so you need to make sure that you understand as part of your job description, it's advocating for your own career.
Yes.
Once you take responsibility for that, you're like, oh, you take that radical responsibility. It's a whole another place of power. Then what I would say is if you don't ask, you don't get, right? So
exactly.
You need to prepare, right? So if you have an ask or a pitch or something you need, academic reimbursement, more time off, whatever you need, come prepared, right? Don't just come, what do they say, gunslinging into the meeting and being like, oh, I need this. And like, there's no rationale behind it, especially if you're dealing with like senior level of executives or the CEO of an organization. You've got to be prepared because you'll get decimated in that conversation. But if you come prepared and you ask, you'll be so much more proud of yourself for asking.
Yeah.
Even if you get a no, like Natalie, you went in, you interviewed, you asked for the job, you didn't get it. Okay, yeah, that's disappointing, but you took it as a learning experience so that you could eventually get the job. Interviewing is just basically saying, please hire me. Will you hire me? That's a question, right, in the interview process. So whatever it is, I would tell you to just ask. And if you don't get it, or if it's a no, fine, you'll learn. You take a step back, you learn from that, and then you can approach that ask again when it's appropriate or culturally appropriate in your organization. And then I would also say is look for opportunities where you can lift up other women. So if you're in meetings and you see someone that might be using another female colleague, or if you're using, like, let's say weaker language, meaning like good, or I think maybe those, help that woman out. That's a call for help that she needs help, and be like, oh, you know what? Natalie is so good at that. You just like reinforce her, compliment her, create a platform for her to use her voice, and vice versa. Because it's going to take other women helping. We have to help one another, right?
Yes.
We can't rip one another down in this process. We've got to be advocates for one another so that we can create those platforms so we can be vocal.
For sure. I'm glad that you've said that. You emphasize the importance of mindset and professional presence in advancing your career. How do you encourage your clients to use imagination and ambition to reshape their mindset and present themselves confidently in leadership roles?
Okay. So in terms of imagination, and other leadership coaches have used this concept, but you are the author of your career story, right? So you're the one who's painting that picture or writing that chapter or what have you. So if you're interviewing, I ask women all the time, what is the story? Like, you're selling yourself, right? You're selling the package. You're selling the history of you. You're selling the gift that you are of all the skills and the experience and the education. So what is the story you want to craft in that discussion, right? Because you are a brand, right? I come from marketing as well. So you are your own brand.
Right.
So you have to be mindful of that. Well, how do you create that online? How do you create that in what you post? How do you create that in the network that you're weaving, right? That takes imagination, right? Because it can either be by default or it can be by your design, but that's completely up to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other piece I tell women is that you need to be able to answer the question in the interview process. And I think ongoing is like, why you? Like, why should they hire you? Why should they promote you? Like, how is that part of your overall career arc and your story, which I think is part of ambition and part of imagination.
Right.
And I think the last piece is, and this goes into taking radical responsibility for your career, is, are you building your plan? So do you have an annual plan? Do you have a semi-annual plan? Everyone talks about New Year's resolutions, which I have to be honest, Natalie, I'm not a fan of, because like by mid-February, no one's at the gym that was like planning to lose all this weight or whatever.
Yeah.
Or to get stronger. People fall off because it's not something that they can really commit to. But set aside time as we're ending, the year or in the beginning of the new year, and just spend some time, like put together, like, what do you want career to look like? Like, what are some of the milestones that you can get there? And then I want you to break them down into like micro habits, right? Because it's in the micro habits that are going to make the difference. That will also help you with your ambition and be imaginative on where you want your career to go in the next year.
Exactly. Cool. So what's the best way, especially for the listeners that would love to work with you, to find you? And I'll also have it in the show notes as well.
Yeah. So you can find me at bravewomenatwork.com. The podcast is Brave Women at Work as well. I'm on Instagram. I'm at LinkedIn under my name, Jennifer Pestikas. And that's probably where I'm the most active from a social media standpoint. And I would like to just call out two things, if it's okay, Natalie.
Sure.
We have two events. My colleague and I, my partner, Hope Mueller of Climb Conferences, and I are co-hosting two really powerful events next year. One is the Climb Conferences Breaking Barriers and Beyond Women's Retreat that's going to be in Lake Las Vegas in February of 2025. And then that's going to be more of an intimate, curated event with up to 20 women maximum. And then for a more traditional leadership conference, we're going to be taking up to 100 women through an amazing women's leadership conference experience called Thrive in 2025 in June of next year. So check them out. We have a website for that, thrive-in25.com. And then you can look up Climb Conferences to see the retreat. So lots of great things happening in the Brave Women at Work kind of sphere next year.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to getting this out there, getting the word out there, and making sure people are brave at work.
Hi, everyone. After hearing today's conversation, you might be reflecting on your own experiences with imposter syndrome. Maybe it's shown up for you during a big career transition, while leading a team, or when stepping into a new opportunity. If that sounds familiar, I have something just for you. As part of the UnCeiling Zone membership, I've created an exclusive recording that takes a deep dive into imposter syndrome. In this session, I share practical strategies to help you recognize imposter syndrome and the subtle ways it shows up in your thoughts and actions, address the fear-based stories that might be holding you back, and reframe your mindset to build lasting confidence as you navigate your career. Imposter syndrome is part of the human experience, especially for ambitious women who are pushing boundaries and breaking ceilings. But it doesn't have to control your narrative. This recording will equip you with tools to not just manage imposter syndrome, but to thrive in spite of it. This is just one of the many resources available in the UnCeiling Zone, a community dedicated to helping women like you dream boldly, act bravely, and achieve your full potential. Whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting your career journey, this is your space to grow and take radical responsibility for your success. If you're ready to take the next step in overcoming imposter syndrome and stepping fully into your ambition, I invite you to join us in the UnCeiling Zone. Head to the notes section of this podcast to learn more and start accessing these exclusive resources today. If you're a woman aiming for management, but stuck in the experience trap, listen up. You're talented, ambitious, but hitting a wall. You need experience to get a management role. But how do you get that experience? Introducing UnCeiling Your Career, the book that's breaking the experience trap. Discover how to showcase your leadership potential, even without prior management experience. Transform your project skills into leadership assets and build a strategic career path. Ready to climb the ladder? Grab the book, UnCeiling Your Career today, at any place you prefer to purchase books, and start your journey to the top. Thank you for joining me on this episode of UnCeiling You. If today's conversation inspired you, make sure to download this episode so you can revisit it anytime and subscribe to the show so you never miss a new episode. For those of you ready to take your ambition to the next level, I invite you to consider joining our membership community where you'll get exclusive bonus content, early access to episodes, and much more. Until next time, remember, it's time to take radical responsibility for your life and unseal your potential to watch the positive ripple effect unfold.